So what does creating space for yourself mean? Or what does it mean when I say create space for yourself? So there's two things that I am talking about when I say space. So first one is literal space. So actually creating an area on the ice where you can skate. Now, before I dive into that deeper, but the second thing is creating the space like in your life. So this is like metaphorical space. So that's, the second thing that we'll dive into. But first, let's talk about like the actual physical space on the ice. So if you've ever been to a practice session or like freestyle ice or whatever your rink calls it, where it's very busy. There are a lot of people. There's like probably private lessons going on. Sometimes there's like actual classes going on. There are coaches yelling at skaters. There are skaters doing their programs. Like there's a lot going on. There's music playing and it's very easy to get distracted. So a lot of times what I see skaters do as a coach, I see skaters kind of like find a little corner, a little area in the rink, like on the ice surface where they feel safe, where they feel like I'm going to create like a tiny little cutout next to the boards where I can just do like a few little jumps and a few little spins and then like pray that my coach won't yell at me to do my program. Like that's usually what I see. Now, when I say you have to learn how to create space for yourself, that's not what I'm talking about, okay? That's the easy thing to do. It's easier to go to the rink and give yourself a little corner. Or if it's not super busy and there's some empty circles, to find a circle and do like all your stuff on, like your jumps, your spins, and like maybe like a couple of different types of turns and things like that. But that's the easy thing. When I'm talking about skating full out, you have to do what feels like outside of your comfort zone. You got to push yourself outside of that little area on the ice. The reason for that is because when you actually are performing or you're competing, you don't get to skate small. You're on the ice by yourself. And it's very rare that as skaters, and if you're listening to this, you know this if you skate, it's extremely rare to have a whole sheet of ice to yourself. That usually never happens. Some people never will get to experience that. And unless they're paying a lot of money to rent ice, like to use by themselves. But most people are not going to be able to do that or have the opportunity to do that in their skating career. The only time where that is going to happen for you is when you're competing or when you're performing a solo, like literally by yourself. So if you don't start breaking out of your little area on the ice, you're going to be filled with so much anxiety and you're going to feel the pressure. You're going to feel everybody's eyes, their pupils looking at you. You're going to feel like a little ant on the ice and you have all these big scary monsters in the bleachers, and especially if you're competing and you have the judges staring at you who are there to literally judge you and criticize and critique you, and you haven't been practicing full out. So that moment is going to bring up so much anxiety. Your heart's going to feel like it's racing. You're going to start sweating. You're going to want to cry. You'll be so scared. It is pure fear when you're not used to skating full out and then you're forced to do it. When you hear the announcer call your name and call the rink out that you're representing, that's immediate pressure because you know everybody knows your name and you can feel that your entire club, even though they're rooting for you, they're like, you better not mess up, right? And even though that's not really true, like your teammates are still going to love you if you fall or you make a mistake in your program. Your coach isn't going to slap you when you get off the ice because you missed a step, like, or you missed a music cue or something. Like, you're not going to shrivel up and die because you forgot a portion of your program, or like you had to make it up, or you went on the fly, or you didn't smile enough. Like, nothing like that is going to happen. And you logically know that, okay? Like, in your brain, you actually know that. But when you're standing there and you're listening to the announcer call your name and call out your rank, And then now it's time for you to go out there, and your coach or somebody is like pushing you out on the ice, being like, go. And then you look out and you see all these giant eyes staring at you, and you see the judges looking down, ready to mark you and actually judge you. It doesn't feel like everything will be fine if you make a mistake. It literally feels like the end of the world in that moment. Your legs are probably shaking, or like for me, I used to feel like my legs were like bricks when you go out there. So, sorry that I now just like totally terrified you in thinking about competing. That's not the point of this. But the point is, those are not feelings that you have to feel when you compete. Most people compete because they actually like to compete, not because those things come up for them and like they feel like they're going to die every time they go on the ice. That's like not a fun thing to feel. But unfortunately, that's what happens for a lot of people when they have to, speak in public, or when they have to perform anywhere of anything, even if they're really talented at it, something like skating. That's sometimes what happens. You just feel that like anxiety welling up on you, and it's really hard. So one of the ways that I personally started to get over this was because I had a lot of problems when I was competing, remembering my program. No matter how much I practice it, I would go out there and compete and I would forget. So I would just have to make it up. And my coach would always be like, wow, I've never seen that program before. Like all the time. Because it was like my brain would go empty. So instead of my legs shaking and feeling like I'm going to die, I would just forget my program and everything that I have just worked really hard to practice. Like I would just forget. I'd go blank. Like it was crazy. But anyway, so one of the reasons how I started to get over that as I started to get older and have more experience is because I really started to skate full out. I actually was on the ice, and in practices, I would stop being fearful of people watching me and looking at me. I would turn my brain off. I'd be like, what would it be like if I was on the ice by myself? I would stand sometimes in the middle of the ice at the beginning of the session while everybody's warming up, and I would just do some crossovers. And I would just start moving my arms. And everybody would think I was weird and whatever, because at the time I was in high school, but like I didn't care, because it was worse to me to go out and compete and spend all this time and money and energy to compete a program that I have been practicing for and forget it. And then everybody's like, what were you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. Like that was more embarrassing to me than going out in the middle of practice and moving my arms around in the middle of the ice. So I would totally take that over forgetting any day. But I learned how to actually carve out space for myself. So I would move around the rink, and I would do all of my movements in my program the same way, or same in my practice as I would in my program. So when it came to my dance step, I would do like the move before my dance step, or some people might call it footwork. I would do the move before and then the move after, and I would do it full out. Use my arms. I'd figure out my breathing patterns. I'd figure out how I'm going to step, where I'm going to step, where am I going to look in the rink when I do this motion? Or if I'm not really that strong on that turn or this jump or this spin, what's a way that I can kind of prepare myself for it physically? So I'd move around the ice doing those things. And then when it came time for me to compete, I would feel like a million times more prepared. Not just because I was practicing the moves that are in the program, but because I practiced my mindset in my program. I practiced my breathing pattern in my program. I knew exactly on the ice how I was going to put my hands, my fingers, my arms, where I was going to turn my head, because I had practiced it full out every single time I was at the rink. So the whole point of this program, Skate Full Out, is to help you do the same thing.